12 o'clock on your Friday afternoon now. Welcome in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head flying solo hosting today. Bill Gunner once again out dealing with some health stuff today, doctor's appointments and all that kind of stuff. He'll be back in here coming up on Tuesday. Programming note, we won't be here on Monday for the MLK holiday. So we'll be doing plenty of previews today for the national championship. Also, of course, talk about the NFL division around this weekend, as well as what happened last night over at Colonial Life Arena with women's basketball and the transfer portal, too. So we'll get into all that as the show goes along. Some programming notes. Brian Edwards not able to join us today. He's actually on a flight right now, so can't talk on the phone during a flight, unfortunately. But our guy Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network joined me earlier on in the morning, and I'll let you hear what he had to say in terms of the games and the lines for this upcoming weekend and what those numbers look like for what's going to be a very fun weekend of football. 5 meaningful games, of course, winner-go-home games in the NFL, and then a chance to crown national champion coming up on Monday with Indiana and Miami down there in South Beach. Home game for the Hurricanes there in the national championship. Captain Dave, as always, producing on the other side of the glass, wearing his puffy jacket again. It's got like that fur lining on the inside of in the hood. Is that thing keeping you warm, Dave?
Yeah, I'm like a Siberian husky wearing that thing.
Well, the thing is, like, you've lost so much weight. You look great, by the way. For those that maybe don't watch the live stream, Captain Dave has slimmed down. He's a lean, mean fighting machine. And unfortunately, when you lose a lot of weight, that makes you colder. Bill deals with the same thing. He's lost a lot of weight over the years, and he's constantly freezing in here. So unfortunately, that is the price you have to pay for getting healthier, Dave.
Also, I'm very old. I'm the oldest person here. Just want to point that out. Really old.
I thought, like, when you got older, you got hotter.
Not me. I get colder.
You? Okay.
Yeah. Really cold. I have to wrap up even in summertime. I got to put a blanket around me at home.
Really? What do you keep your thermostat at?
About 79.
79?
82.
Now, look, I hate being cold as much as the next guy. I'll never go north of, like, 73. And that's to get it to be warm really quickly. Like yesterday when I got home, it was like 67 when I came in. I bumped it up to 73 just to like warm the thing up. But I do have to turn it back down because it just gets like unbearable. But 79, Dave, my goodness.
Yeah, I've got 3 blankets on the bed and an electric blanket. So.
Oh, hey, the electric blanket, that is a pro move right there. That is very underrated. I feel like not enough people talk about those. I've always liked the electric heating pad too.
Oh, yeah.
That you can put under your neck, under your back, or whatever that can help warm you up if you don't have the benefit of an electric blanket. But that's you need to warm up your whole body. That's a good way to do it.
Yes, it is, and I highly recommend it.
And you're our resident meteorologist here. What is the latest on snow for this weekend? Do you have an update?
I think we're looking at about a 30% chance of snow on Sunday.
Okay. Now, is like that sticky snow, or is it just like a mix?
Here, it's going to be mostly north.
Okay.
North of Columbia. Like Newberry County will get some, but I don't think it's going to be very much. You don't have to worry about it.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
Yeah.
My wife works for DOT, so they're talking about sending her out to, I think, the low country out on the coast because I think they're supposed to get it worse or something, right?
Yeah, they could get some ice possibly.
Okay.
Possibly, I believe.
Yeah, well, if you're out there listening, our friends out in Myrtle Beach and Charleston, have fun, buy your milk and bread and all that kind of stuff, and batten down the hatches for the snow coming in. Because again, we all panic when the snow comes. So hopefully it won't be too bad. And I don't know, we'll see. Good weekend to stay inside and watch football. That's right.
Absolutely, and another thing is that when you're looking at snow or the possibility of snow and everything, there's no need to panic. Not in where we are.
Dave, we live in the South, man. We panic about everything.
Wait, I grew up near Greenville, and we got snow back then about 3 times a year. Never freaked me out. I driven in snow in the mountains up in North Carolina all the time. I mean, it's not that hard. You go slow, stay off the roads if you can. It's not that hard, really.
Dave, if I dropped a snow cone on the ground outside of this studio, I bet I could get everybody to go panic buy everything out off the shelves at every grocery store here locally.
That's probably true. I panicked a little bit during COVID.
Well, everybody did.
Well, everybody was buying toilet paper and everything, hand sanitizer. I bought batteries. So if you need batteries, you let me know.
Oh, you still got some?
Yeah, I've got like
Okay.
a 20-year supply.
Well, I might have to hit you up for that. I always feel like I'm running out of batteries.
Yeah, I mean,
You'll be my battery dealer. How about that?
Yeah, your remotes and everything, your TV, you got to have them, AAA, AA, and
Yep.
the occasional 9-volt.
Very rare, but the 9-volt, got to always have those too. Well, there you have it, folks. If you need a battery at a critical time, Captain Dave's got your hookup. So hit him up and he'll get you squared away when it comes to your batteries. Again, a lot of things happening across the sports landscape, and we'll start off last night with what was a phenomenal game over at Colonial Life Arena. Number 2 South Carolina taking on number 4 Texas. It's funny, they're the exact same AP rankings that they were when they played back on Thanksgiving Day. Of course, Texas won that game, and South Carolina dropped in the rankings. Then Texas shot back up. Then Texas falls after losing to LSU. And again, we'll see where the rankings come out at the beginning of next week. I imagine Carolina's probably going to stay put at number 2, and we'll see how far Texas falls. But Vic Schaefer's gotten Don Staley twice since he's been at Texas, and they've joined the SEC. And again, it was a back and forth game back on Thanksgiving. Rory Harmon hits that last second shot to elevate Texas. Now, that game did not count towards the conference because it was during non-conference play at the Players Era tournament and all that. So this one is the more important of the 2 matchups when you talk about conference seeding and all those kind of things. It is worth noting there is not a coin flip tiebreaker anymore, so Greg Sankey is not going to get on television to flip a coin between the number 1 and the number 2 seed like he had to do last year. But in terms of seeding for the SEC tournament coming up in Greenville here at the end of the regular season, that is important. And they split the series last year. They only have the 1 game this year, so South Carolina has the edge. And Texas, of course, lost to LSU on Sunday, so now they're in a 2-game hole to South Carolina, so they would need South Carolina to really falter down the stretch here in conference play for them to be able to get that advantage over them heading into the SEC women's tournament. But again, 68-65 win for South Carolina, and a game that was really sloppy, right? Especially early, both sides just struggling to hang on to the basketball. And I think you can attribute part of that to the fact that they just know each other so well. Again, these 2 programs have seen each other 6 different times, counting last night, since Texas joined the conference just a little over a year ago. So they know each other's moves, right? They know what makes each other tick. They know what the tendencies of all these players, especially the ones that have been there for all those matchups, like Raven Johnson, like Joyce Edwards, and Rory Harmon, and Madison Booker, and Oldacre, and all them on that side for Texas. So these two teams have each other scouted incredibly well. That being said, Texas did get off to a really good start there. I had the 7-point advantage at the end of the first quarter, and I thought, we'll get into what happened in the last 5 minutes of the game coming up in a moment. But I thought what was an equally critical point was South Carolina closing the gap right there at the end of the first half. Joyce Edwards gets the steal and the foul, and then hits both of her free throws for South Carolina to tie the game at 32 at halftime. When you look at the way both teams had shot in the first half, it shouldn't have been that close, right? Texas was 50% on their field goals in the first half. South Carolina was only at 35%. But because Texas had turned the ball over so many times, South Carolina had gotten off more shots and again, was able to get to the line and all that kind of stuff to be able to even it up. So you went in even at the halfway point, and I thought Carolina came out with a lot of momentum in the second half and obviously played a whole lot better down the stretch, is what helped lead them, to the victory. And again, I think everybody's kind of squaring in on those final 5 minutes when they came back from the last, TV timeout, tied at 55. And those are situations where you count on your best players to go out there and make plays. And that's exactly what South Carolina did in terms of putting the ball in their playmakers' hands and watch them go out there and make those kind of things happen. And Dave, I'll pull a cut right here. This will be cut number 8, or Dawn Staley after the game talks about her team's fight and toughness down the stretch in this game.
Huge. That's what we thought it would come down to. It's not going to be, we're both setting up plays for us to execute. There'll be some of that throughout the game, but when it really comes down to it, it is making plays. I thought Joyce got some key offensive rebounds, some key tie-ups. It is those plays that really are game-changing, and it gives you the momentum to continue to try to win a game. I thought our crowd was great. They wouldn't let up, and they also willed us to a win.
And when you talk about those last couple of minutes, you mentioned Joyce Edwards there, not only grabbing rebounds, but making some pretty critical shots during that time period as well. But in those last couple of minutes, the real star was Raven Johnson. And she had a little bit of a struggle early in the game when it came to her scoring. But again, as we've seen her do many times, when it comes down to the very end and the chips are down, right, she's able to step up and make things happen. And, she had a couple of really tough buckets. And again, she was one-on-one with Rory Harmon throughout that kind of game, and she's able to fight past her, get a couple of key scores there, one of them to put South Carolina up by 5 with about 23 seconds to go. She did have what could have been a extremely critical mistake when she fouls Rory Harmon there with about 7 or so seconds to go, when South Carolina's only up by 3 points, and obviously that didn't end up coming back to to bite South Carolina. And I think the most important play she made of the entire night was that final inbound pass, right? In South Carolina, because Texas had been pressing throughout the entire night, and that was something that was giving South Carolina fits and something that led to a share of those turnovers last night. Carolina had to inbound it up 3 with 7-8 seconds left, whatever it was, and that was not a guarantee. And she's able to get a clean pass off to Joyce Edwards, who's able to create some separation and able to dribble out the clock. We talked about this earlier. It was weird that Texas didn't end up fouling there. Again, your percentages of winning at that point in time are lower because, it's in Joyce to the line, and Joyce had been very effective with her free throw shooting, on the night, 8 for 9 from the line. So your opportunity to win that game would have still been low, but it's better than just letting the clock dribble out, which that's kind of weird. But Texas made that decision for whatever reason, and South Carolina, benefited from it. But again, hard-fought game, and when Dawn plays a team for a second time, and I know UConn beat them twice last year, so that's an exception, not the rule. More often than not, if Dawn plays a team for a second time, especially if she loses the first time, I'm always going to take South Carolina, to adapt and get better. Look, this is a much different South Carolina team, one that's healthier than they were, earlier on in the season when they played Texas and lost on Thanksgiving Day. We saw the debut of Ali Turnabais last night. She only played a couple minutes, didn't have a huge impact on the game, but she's going to be very important going forward, and seeing what she does to factor in the offense. Obviously, Tanai Latson seemed to kind of get back on the horse last night after having, a little bit of a rusty game against Georgia the other day when she came back off the injury. But again, South Carolina playing its best basketball as this season goes deeper and deeper. Got some tough matchups coming up, like Vanderbilt, who still hasn't lost a game yet. Got the big matchup with LSU coming up in a couple Saturdays. I believe that's on Valentine's night. There on ABC on national television, so that's going to be huge. But a big win to give South Carolina an advantage in the conference standings over a very good Vic Schaefer Texas team. And again, a lot of basketball left to be played, but again, this looks like once again, as always, one of the best teams in the entire country. They'll be back in action coming up on Sunday, taking on Coppin State. Tip for that is at 12. Pregame coverage will start at 11:30 right here on 107.5 The Game. We also got some transfer portal news yesterday as well, as we get set to close out the open period of the transfer portal in terms of putting your name in. We'll talk about that coming up next as we continue on with the halftime show. Tyler Head and Captain Dave on your Friday here in The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Friday on the game as we wrap up the week. Again, appreciate everybody, as always, watching us on the live stream on the 107.5 Game YouTube channel. As always, powered by Integrated Media and sponsored by our friends over at Shepherd's Glass. Because Bill's not here today, our guy Scott Hamilton will be jumping in here with me at 1:15 today, and will be carrying along with me through the end of the show. Chris Deering will join me at 1:15. We'll talk about the latest going on with high school sports, a lot of realignment news and all that kind of stuff, as well as some coaching news as well across the Midlands. When it comes to sports like basketball, which we'll get into with him coming up at the top of the next hour. But today is January the 16th, and if that date sounds significant to you, it's because it's the end of the transfer portal window. Again, this year we have one single portal window in college football that started on January 2nd and ends today in terms of being able to put your name into it. Again, you can continue to pull talent out of it in the coming days and weeks and all that kind of stuff, and we'll certainly keep a watch on South Carolina as they continue to do that. But if you are a current player in college football, you want to go somewhere else, today is the day as the deadline to ultimately put your name in. I saw a stat the other day. There's like 10,000 players in the portal. This is getting more and more insane every single year. Like, yeah, we follow along with the high-level players that we know are going to go somewhere and get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in NIL, but there's a lot of players out there that are voluntarily ending their college careers by betting on themselves, thinking that they've got an opportunity to go somewhere else, and, well, they don't get picked up, and they go try and return to their previous school, and that school's like, hey, we already filled your roster spot, so sorry, good luck, though. Kind of the stories we don't get to talk about quite as much coming out of the transfer portal. That's a very real thing. And, my God, it's like the number of people entering the portal seemingly doubles every single year. It's crazy. One of the latest names to go into the transfer portal does come from South Carolina last night, and it's kind of a result of what Carolina got out of the portal prior to that. But Desmond Umeozulu, Des U, as we affectionately call him, has decided to continue his college career elsewhere. Of course, he came in that 2023 class, was a four-star guy that had a reasonable amount of hype in terms of what he could end up being here at South Carolina. And I go back to the conversation that we've had about him a lot over his couple years here at Carolina, that when he gets off the bus, I mean, he looks the part. 6'6", 255. He looks every bit of a fearsome edge rusher as you would want. And in his time here, it took some time for him to become a solid contributor. He played a lot more this past year. He wasn't in that featured role like Dylan Stewart in this past year, Brian Thomas Jr., but he played quite a bit. He more than, doubled. Yeah, more than doubled. Actually, he played more snaps this past year than his prior 2 years combined. Got some sacks on the year, got some pressures, made some key tackles, those kind of things. So he was a lot more involved on the defense this year. And when you lose Brian Thomas Jr. out of eligibility, the question, one of the many questions we had about this team going in the offseason was who's going to be that other edge rusher, right? We got Dylan Stewart, and re-signing him was obviously a big deal. And, again, props to Shane Beamer and South Carolina for getting that done. But as we've asked the past two seasons, or, well, I guess we didn't ask it going into 2024 because we didn't know what Dylan Stewart was going to end up being. But one of the most important roles on that team that year was Kyle Kennard, who came in as transfer and was the opposite edge rusher that benefited a lot from Dylan Stewart being the freak that he was and commanding a lot of attention, and vice versa. Dylan Stewart benefited from, as we saw how good Kyle Kennard was as the season went along as well, benefited from the attention that was paid to him, where Dylan Stewart could wreak havoc at times as well. This past year, Brian Thomas Jr. did a really good job of occupying that role and benefited a lot from it. Dylan Stewart, I know, gets frustrated with the double teams and all that kind of stuff, but that allows the guy on the other side of the defensive line to eat, and that's what Brian Thomas Jr. did a solid job of this past year. So who's going to be that next guy, right? And we thought Des U was going to be in that mix. Carolina goes out and signs Caleb Herring from Tennessee, guy that got 4 sacks this past year, and much like Des U, played a lot more this season than he had in his prior 2 years of college football out there with the Volunteers, and was a solid rotational piece on that from that edge room, a very talented edge room at that at Tennessee. And it's not Chaz Coleman, who everybody in the transfer portal wanted, including South Carolina, and you thought maybe the connection with Deion Barnes would help that case out. Didn't end up happening, obviously. But now South Carolina gets Caleb Herring, who's proven and shown production at the SEC level, and I think that's a real good candidate to be that other pass rusher on the opposite of Dylan Stewart. And look, it's a very busy room. You got George Wilson, you got the Collins brothers coming in, you got Walker coming in out of high school. So there's a lot of competition in that room for those snaps. But again, Caleb Herring's got proven production where you can say pretty confidently he's at least going to be in that mix. And we'll obviously see what those rotations look like once the season does finally get here. But you look at the loss of Des U and you say, okay, well, you've at least balanced out with what you lost in him and what you gained in Caleb Herring based on what their respective college careers have been up to this point. And we'll obviously see where Des U does end up going to continue his college football. But obviously, and hey, there's always possibility. We saw it with Josiah Thompson. We saw it with Julius Solomon. He can't always come back if he decides to change his mind. So we'll see. But for now, he is entered in the transfer portal, and South Carolina adds another with Caleb Herring out of the portal from Tennessee. And, we'll get into next week just kind of everything that Carolina lost and where they kind of stand in terms of what they've gotten out of the portal up to that point. But coming up next, typically on Fridays, we talk to our guy, Brian Edwards of Vegas Insider. As I mentioned earlier, he is not available on a flight right now. So we'll still get into the numbers of the weekend for the NFL divisional round games, as well as the college football playoff national championship, when my guy Corey Parson, who joined myself and Jack Veltri earlier on in the morning from the BetMGM network, let's hear that conversation coming up next and what he has to say about the numbers and the plays for this upcoming weekend across all of football. It is the halftime show. It's Outerhead and Captain Dave along with you here on your Friday on the game. It's all right here for our friends over at Tilly's Warehouse, the first wine and spirit store in 5 Points in the past 20 years. As we wrap up the weekend, head into the weekend, if you need some beverages for maybe staying inside and watching all this great football that we're going to have over the course of the next couple of days, Tilly's is your stop. Located in the old Pavlov's building on Green Street, right behind the Salty Nut Cafe, they've got everything that you need for a fun weekend with friends, family, or just hanging out by yourself. They've got everything that you need. If you want some Garnet and Black vodka, they've got you covered there. Want things like High Noons, Sun Cruisers, by the case or in the can, they've got those as well. They're also have a Class B license so they can sell to local bars there in the 5 Points area if you're running low on your stock. Stay connected with them on Instagram and Facebook or visit their website, tillswarehouse.com, for more information and discover why Tilly's is your new must-visit spot over in 5 Points. 10 o'clock, welcome back in. Hour number 2, it is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltree along with you here on your Friday, getting you set for a full weekend of high-stakes game. It's win or go home in the NFL, and we're crowning a national champion coming up on Monday for college football. As always, each and every Friday at 10 o'clock, it's time to run the numbers with our guy Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network, who's joining us on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Corey, appreciate the time as always, man. How we doing today?
Doing well, you know what I'm saying, getting ready for this big weekend of football, obviously starting with the NFL, concluding with college football's national championship. So, you know, feeling pretty good about where we are right now. Had a good weekend last weekend. You know, we hit the Panthers. We hit a couple other things as well. Disappointing that the Jaguars didn't get home, but, you know, we still feel pretty good about where things are right now. So, pretty solid record for the season. So, hopefully everybody's been profitable as we move through this journey and then obviously turn the page into what comes next, you know, Super Bowl Sunday, March Madness, and all the things that go along as we go through the sports betting calendar. The Masters will be here before you know it, too.
Yeah. You know, we're obviously sad that football's coming to an end, but plenty of huge events going to be happening over the next couple of months that we'll obviously get all the gambling insight from you on as those weeks go by. So let's jump right into it. We've been talking about the national championship there in the last hour. Indiana, the 8.5-point favorite over Miami as the Hoosiers look to complete what is one of the most improbable seasons we've ever seen in college football. However, it is a home game for Miami, quite literally playing in Hard Rock Stadium. Mario Cristobal trying to get his first national championship with a very talented, very experienced roster as well. What do you see when you look into this game?
Number opened up 9. Dropped down to 8.5. Looks like it'll probably hit 8 before kickoff. But Tyler, I got to be 100% honest with you. I understand the situation with Miami essentially playing a home game. I don't think it matters. You know, Indiana is the best team in college football. And to be honest with you, I don't even feel like it's close. And this is not really looking at the numbers or going by what people are saying. Everybody's bought in right now. The only reason to bet Miami would be because you're contrarian. And I understand that aspect of it, but what we've seen Indiana, y'all guys talk college football all the time. What we've seen Indiana do this year, you mentioned one of the most improbable seasons in college football history. I mean, I can't remember nothing like this. This is wild, to be honest with you. And here they go now. They get a chance to compete for the national championship. And I don't think they dropped the ball here. I think 8 is the right number. I wouldn't be surprised if it lands exactly on 8. But I see probably a double-digit victory for the Hoosiers.
What's up, Corey? It's Jack. We got the NFL going on tomorrow. Bills, Broncos kicking off the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. I saw that you have a ticket for the Broncos to win the AFC. What happened to the Steelers winning the AFC? What happened to that?
That was a play for last week where I actually, that was a play for last week. I actually saw value in the Steelers at that long number, but the winner of that game was going to be a team that was going to be in the mix anyway. But obviously you saw how things played out in Pittsburgh this week. Jack, let me tell you something. One of my bold predictions coming into the year was that this was going to be Mike Tomlin's last year in Pittsburgh. And everybody was like, well, they'll never fire him. And I was like, I basically think he'll step down. And that, I've been pretty spot on with some of these opinions, even when it comes to the bold predictions. So I feel pretty good about where we're at right now. But, yeah, so back when I was in Vegas in August, I took out a 24-1 ticket for the Denver Broncos to win the AFC Championship. I actually wanted to get a ticket. I couldn't find it for the AFC Championship game to be held at Invesco Field. Now, with that being said, I'm not going to go against that now. Broncos come into this game as a short favorite at home. I think that's a good betting spot for them right there. They played the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs last year. This year, a little bit more experienced team. Then they're going to be able to handle it better. Hopefully, the coaching search with Vance Joseph doesn't take too much away. So I'm not going to go away from that ticket now. But here's the thing. If the Broncos do, and hopefully they do win this game, next week I basically have a situation where I have the Broncos as a 24-1 underdog. So the only correct move is to come back and bet their opponent as well. Because at this point, the ticket has so much value that I have to figure out a way to make money off of it. In sports betting circles, it's called hedge equity. So you want to try to get on top of some of these things early, and then this way you can put yourself in the spot to where you can, come out profitable regardless of what happens in the AFC Championship game. But they got to get past the Buffalo Bills first. And Josh Allen is the Buffalo Bills at this moment right now. But I just think that in this situation, a team that they have faced in the playoffs last year, they get them in their building, in that atmosphere, and I think the Broncos pull it off.
Again, running the numbers with Corey Parson of the Bet MGM Network, looking at the NFL divisional round coming up this weekend. The number one seed in the NFC, Seattle Seahawks, playing host to their divisional rival, the San Francisco 49ers. Last time we saw the Seahawks in action, they were defeating the 49ers 13-3 in the last game of the regular season game. They held that 49ers offense under 200 yards in that game. Of course, 49ers going on the road, picking up the big victory last week in Philadelphia. But the Seahawks, pretty sizable 7-point favorite in this one.
Yeah, opened up 7.5. Show you right there what the odds makers think. They don't think the 49ers can hang. Going into Seattle, brings back memories of, probably about a decade or so ago. Yeah, my daughter, probably about a decade or so ago when the Seahawks and the 49ers were really the biggest rivalry in the NFL, through the Pete Carroll era and the Legion of Boom and all the great games they had. This one is probably not going to be a great game. This is going to be the Seahawks defense locking San Francisco down. They already have the formula. Styles make fights. And the Seahawks are kind of set up perfectly. The odds makers are telling you that. That hook got lost. It got dropped down to 7, kind of pushing in the push range, or maybe for San Francisco to get a backdoor cover. I think it's too much for San Fran right now. I think the Seahawks, what an excellent head coaching hire they made after they got rid of Pete Carroll. I thought Pete Carroll was going to do good in Vegas, but apparently, that didn't work out. So I'm going to go with the Seahawks in this one right here. I think the Seahawks are a very dangerous team. The only thing I worry about with Seattle is if Sam Darnold turns into Jet Sam Darnold, Carolina Sam Darnold, or end of last year at Minnesota Sam Darnold. But there's really nothing that says that that's what they're going to turn into. I'm going to roll with the Seahawks in this one.
All right, we got Texans-Pats kicking off the Sunday slate. I got to be honest, the Patriots are a 3-point favorite in this one. And I know C.J. Stroud's got to take care of the football. That's got to be priority number one. But, man, this Texans defense, I really think they could do some good things here against New England in this off. I know Drake May, potential MVP here, but, what do you think about is this line a little too close, or what do you think? Is it in the right direction here?
Yeah, I think it's going to push, to be honest with you. If it stays at 3, I think it's going to push. If it hits 2.5, I would hop on Houston, to be honest with you. That 2.5 has been a number that I've been playing all season, a 2.5-point dog. But I think it's going to sit here steady at 3, which makes me think it's going to be a push. Special teams going to play a role in this one right here. It's probably going to be a big kick late in this game. I think the Patriots are the 3-point favorites. I look at this game as a push. I probably would bet the under as my favorite wager on this game right here. Nice low total. So that one will probably come in. But I just look at – I don't know if Houston has enough offense. They're very, very good on defense, very well coached, but so are the New England Patriots. It just seems like how quickly we are back to playing big-time playoff football at Gillette Stadium. It happened just like that. And, Mike Vrabel, the correct hire, and they wanted their guy. They went out and got him, and now they're back in the position to possibly make a deep run.
Yeah, they're back in that position, and the Titans are trying to hire yet another head coach after they let Vrabel go a couple years ago. Funny how those things work out for teams like that. One more game to look at here will be the nightcap coming up on Sunday. Rams traveling to the Chicago Bears. Rams are 3.5-point favorite here. Interesting stat I came across, though. Matt Stafford, again, he spent the majority of his career in Detroit playing inside, and has been in Los Angeles the past couple of years. Not a ton of cold weather games. When it's been cold and or snowy, Matt Stafford is 1-9 as a starter in the NFL. That, he's obviously the more experienced and the better quarterback overall in this matchup, but I can't ignore that statistic going into what's going to be a frigid, cold Chicago night on Sunday.
Well, I tell you, Matt Stafford, and you look at the beginning of his career with the shoulder injuries, it looked like he was going to be a bust. But then he basically, we saw what he did with Calvin Johnson. We saw what he did with Cooper Kupp, and now we see what he's doing with Puka Nacua. And Matt Stafford is going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The beginning of his career did not start that way. So he was able to bounce back from those injuries, and obviously getting to the Rams with Sean McVay was very good for his career. Going on the road, laying past the hook, the Rams are the better football team. I think the Chicago Bears run comes to an end this weekend. Very successful season for the Chicago Bears. Obviously, you see growth in Caleb Williams. I just think the Rams are in too good of a spot right now. They're playing too good of a brand of football, and I think we see Rams Seahawks in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, I think that'd be a pretty fun NFC Championship game, and we'll see if your Broncos ticket ends up working out. And if not, do you have a third option for a ticket for next week?
No, right now, in the NFC, not much luck in the NFC this year. Missed the Bears totally. Couldn't figure out. I thought the Bears would not be a good football team going into the year. The NFC, I kind of was still on Detroit, but that fizzled out. I thought Philadelphia was the best team and able to make a run, but, in Philadelphia, probably too much internal stuff going on in that locker room. And the NFC West was very strong this year. And I am not a good handicapper. I'll be 100% honest with you guys. I'm not a good handicapper of the NFC West. I just didn't see it. So, but those are the best teams in football right now. The Niners, the Rams, and the Seahawks. All three of those teams are playing this weekend. And the poor Cardinals, they got a lot of stuff that they got to handle because they got a franchise quarterback who's getting franchise quarterback money who's not a franchise quarterback.
There's a lot of teams around the league that are paying money to quarterbacks that don't deserve it. Trust me, as a Falcons fan, I'm like, Welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Friday on the game. Again, appreciate our guy Corey Parson from the BetMGM Network hanging out with us a little bit earlier and diving into all the numbers for these games over the weekend. And it should be a lot of fun as we dwindle down the football calendar. As it stands right now, 8 more meaningful games to go when you count the 5 games this weekend, the 2 conference championships next weekend, and, of course, the Super Bowl in a couple weeks. And then we have to go through that long 8-9-month process of waiting for football season to come back and do all of our countdowns and all those kind of things. But excited for what's coming up this weekend. A lot of really good matchups in the NFL. We talked about quarterbacks a little bit in that last segment there with each of those matchups. It's so interesting because you have such an interesting mix of quarterbacks. You obviously have, veterans with tons of experience like Matt Stafford. You have guys like Bo Nix and C.J. Stroud that are very early on in their playoff tenures. And I thought it was interesting. Jack and I talked about this a little bit earlier. Like, who do you trust the most? Like, from 1 to 8, what is your ranking of how you trust these quarterbacks still left standing in the NFL playoffs? And I got like Stafford and Allen as 1A and 1B. Of course, Stafford's experience speaks for itself. Again, what stat about cold weather is a little concerning as they'll be playing in sub-20-degree temperatures out there in Chicago for the Rams. McVay doesn't have a great record in cold weather games, himself either, so we'll see what kind of factor that plays. Josh Allen, they're going to have no problem, I think, going on the road to Mile High and taking on the Denver Broncos. Obviously a great defense, but as Corey alluded to a moment ago, everything that the Bills accomplish is going to come off the back of Josh Allen. More likely than not, you saw him last week will himself into the end zone, against the Jacksonville Jaguars. That defense isn't great. It's going to take a lot of points to win these games in the playoffs, as they needed last week to get past the Jaguars. And again, I trust Josh Allen. I don't know if he's going to win the MVP or not. I think Stafford or Drake May is probably in line to do that, but Josh Allen can make this run happen almost single-handedly for the most part, with the Buffalo Bills, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. But, Stafford and Allen, kind of the 1A and 1B there. Drake May, who's had a phenomenal year, and again, could very well be the MVP coming up here in a couple weeks, would probably be my third option for what he's done out there in New England, and finally, got a really good head coach in Mike Vrabel that's got that train on the right track and potentially headed back towards another Super Bowl for the Patriots for the first time since the Bill Belichick era. After that, Brock Purdy. My concern level with San Francisco is the health of everybody around him. Of course, George Kittle gets injured last week in their game against Philadelphia. Brock Purdy, though, has shown you the ability to be very efficient, and he's been a part of a team that's gotten to a Super Bowl, a couple years ago. They just haven't obviously won the thing, but he's obviously capable of going out there and having some very special performances himself. Caleb Williams, again, super high upside, and he made some ridiculous throws in that win last week in the comeback against the Packers. He's still got that wild side to him, where he made some critical mistakes early in that game, throwing interceptions. Where you can still have some bad plays, and against a team like the Rams, that margin for error is going to be a lot lower. I think, and especially this being his first playoff run, is the moment going to be a little bit too big for him at some point? We'll certainly have to see. Again, they've had so many great comeback wins this year. Maybe he's not, fazed by anything at this point. So I'd put him as my number 5. Bo Nix at number 6. Only has the one prior playoff start where they lost to the Bills last year. Of course, a very solid, respectable season for Bo Nix. The lack of experience in the playoffs, something that is going to concern me. Again, they haven't had to play in the first round, so we'll see what that extra week off does for him, and maybe that'll help. And he is going up against a Buffalo defense that isn't great, so maybe he can put up some really good numbers here. Again, I give the matchup advantage to Josh Allen, obviously, but we'll see what Bo Nix is capable of. And then my bottom 2, I go Sam Darnold and C.J. Stroud. And Darnold specifically dealing with an oblique injury. Does seem like he's going to go, but him not being on 100%, obviously a level of concern. It's just the fact that, as Corey alluded to a little bit ago, like Jets Sam Darnold always seems to be lurking, right? We saw it come out last year in the final game of the regular season against the Lions, and then in the playoffs in the first round exit that they had after that. And then when you couple that with an injury, I don't like that from an optics standpoint. Now, again, Seattle's got a great defense, and that could still win in the game, but I do concern myself with Sam Darnold and how well he plays, and if he can step up in these playoff moments, as he just hasn't had an opportunity to be in a lot of. And then C.J. Stroud, again, much like the Seahawks, great strength on that team is the defense. Stroud tried to give the game away to the Steelers multiple times last week. They were only able to capitalize on a couple of those fumbles that he put on the ground, and obviously did enough to still win the game. But shakiness for C.J. Stroud definitely concerns me as they get set to take on an even better defense in the Patriots this upcoming weekend. But it should be a lot of fun, and I'm good with just about any kind of conference championship and Super Bowl matchups we end up with, and it'll be interesting to see who shakes out at the end of the weekend as occupying those spots for the final couple games of the NFL season. We'll talk with Chris Deering coming up next to start hour number 2 from Prep Red Zone about everything going on around high school sports, not only on the hardwood, but also realignment as things are shifting around for the upcoming school and sports calendar year. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Captain Dave on your Friday on the Game. Hour number 2, halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Friday on the game. Again, Scott Hamilton will jump in here with me, coming up at 1:15. Hang out through the rest of the show. We'll continue to preview the national championship and everything going on around college football, as well as get back into women's basketball last night and what's going on with transfer portal with South Carolina as well. But it is time to talk to our guy, Chris Deering, joining me now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Chris, hope you're doing well. I didn't have a voice last week, so we didn't get to talk. So I'll break my own rule and tell you Happy New Year, even though we're 2 weeks into 2026. But hope you're doing well, man.
I am doing great. Yeah, we missed you last week. Happy New Year to you, Tyler. It's gotten off to a great start here on the high school scene for things, and a lot going on. I was at the South Carolina women's game last night, too. I mean, just a fantastic atmosphere. I don't think it was the best game played by 2 top 5 teams, but it was, South Carolina won, and so that was good for them, and just an incredible atmosphere at the CLA last night.
Before we get into some of the litigation going on around high school sports, what games you got an eye on? What are some of the things you've been out lately? What's going on from an on the court, on the field standpoint that we need to know about?
So one thing you missed last week, I filled Bill in on this, so I am actually doing the color commentating on the Watch 57 game of the week this year. I think this is my 3rd or 4th year doing it with my good buddy Stacy Huff. So we will be over at River Bluff and Chapin tonight if people want to tune in. We had the girls' game at 6 p.m. and the boys' game at 7:30. So looking forward to that. A lot of on-court stuff happening. As far as the teams to watch, it hadn't changed much from what we talked about in early December or late December before we broke for the holidays. I think Gray Collegiate's really good. I think Dutch Fork's really good on the boys' side of things. I think Keenan's good. I said this to Bill last week. I'll say it again to you this week. Football might not have to run through the Midlands every year to crown a state champion. It's gotten better in recent years, but I think you can look back historically, and Columbia has done really well in both boys and girls basketball, and I think that's going to be the case again this season. There's going to be teams in every classification that will be challenging for a state championship, and I don't see that changing much this year. So a lot of teams to really get out and see. Didn't get out on Tuesday like I normally do to see somebody play, but looking forward to being over at River Bluff tonight for their game against Chapin.
So unfortunately, much like in college sports, we have to focus on some of the things happening off the court and off the field when it comes to shifting and realignment. That's exactly what's happening across the state as well. And we'll get into some of these moves as the high school league has started off approved Brooklyn Casey's appeal to move from 4A down to 3A.
Yeah, so Brooklyn Casey was one of the teams that were approved. So we started this thing this week on Tuesday with the executive committee. In front of the executive committee, most teams, it seemed like, got denied their appeal to move classifications. So a lot of teams went in front of the appellate panel Thursday and Friday. They just actually wrapped up a little bit ago, about an hour ago. And Brooklyn Casey was one of the teams that did go in front of the appellate committee. One of their big concerns was travel, and they were awarded to go from 4A to 3A. And, a lot of these schools made compelling cases. Some made the same case, and I was a little bit, scratching my head a little bit when I was listening. Some I felt like made very similar cases, and one was approved, one school was approved, and one school wasn't approved. But Brooklyn Casey was approved yesterday in front of the appellate panel. I think the other ones that got approved yesterday, Greenville Tech went from 4A to 2A. Bridges Prep went from 3A to 2A, and Lucy Beckham went from 5A to 4A in front of the appellate panel today. Like I said, it just wrapped up. Local team did get denied. Dreher wanted to move down the classification from 4A to 3A. They were denied. Hilton Head was denied as well. But, from that point forward, everybody won their appeal. Greer Middle College, South Florence, West Florence, both of those teams are moving. South and West Florence are moving from 5A to 4A. That was sort of big. Blacksburg, Pendleton, and Brazier Middle College also won their appeal today. So again, this part is over. The classifications are set. They did sort of break one of the rules that they had put when they sort of said they were redoing the classifications this year. They said there would be at least 36 teams in 5A, but where it stands right now, they have 35 teams in 5A, 45 in 4A, 35 in 3A, 45 in 2A, and Class A has 70, which we've talked about was split into two classifications like 5A is doing right now. So now they have to go back and place teams in regions, and that's going to be, that's probably, in my opinion, harder than maybe doing the classifications, because then you got to worry about travel, and you can't just look at football that plays on Friday. These winter sports, basketball and wrestling, and then when you get to the spring with baseball, softball, soccer, tennis, all this, it's travel during the week. It's not just on Friday. These kids are probably leaving school early on maybe a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and depending on travel time and how far they are in region play, they might not get back home to 11:30, 12:30 at night. And that's not good for the student athletes. So a lot to be determined on the region breakdown and how things sit as well. So still have to go through that period, and I'm sure there will be some appeals when we get to that portion of it as well.
Again, talking to Chris Deering here on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Are there? I'm sure there are. What are the specific enrollment requirements for the different classifications? Do you know?
It's not set at a certain number, I don't believe. They just, I think when they first put the classifications out, I think Class 5A had close to 40 teams. And like I say, after the appeals and how everything went, they ended up with 35. And I want to say maybe the smallest school in 5A has about, and I'm going to tell this number wrong, so I might not even want to say it, maybe 1,400, 1,500 kids. So it's broken down, just they take the 45-day enrollment, grades 9 through 11, and they break it down and try to, just make the classifications as even as possible. We knew one classification was going to be bigger than the rest, just like it is this year, or it has been for the last 2 years with 5A, and they determined that they were going to do 1A as the larger classifications this time, and that's why you see 70 schools. Our good buddy Lou Bajak, I was following his Twitter some today when I couldn't listen, and Twitter did go down this morning in the middle of all this, so I couldn't really keep up for a minute. But he said out of the 70 schools in 5A, or excuse me, in Class A, 58 play football, 70 play volleyball, 70 play basketball, 52 play baseball, and 56 play softball. So I think you can see in all those sports you go have the Division I and a Division II champion in Class A.
We'll get to some coaching news here in reference to Zach Norris being rehired by Keenan. I know this is a story that's kind of been followed along for a while now, and to reference to some things that happened off the court during the offseason. Is he still going to have to serve a suspension, pay the fine? Well, what's the latest on all that?
So the latest I can piece together, and again, thanks to Lou Bajak on this, we talked on, I guess it was Tuesday night or Wednesday, we were talking about it. Lou went out to Keenan on Tuesday. Coach Norris is back with the program. He can go to practices. He cannot sit on the bench during games. He's unable to speak on the situation. He was suspended at the beginning of school year over the summer. They had a player that was not enrolled at Keenan, practicing with them during the summer, and he got turned into the high school league. They just suspended Coach Norris. He's one of the most successful coaches that's been in the basketball for a number of years. I mean, I've known Coach Norris since the late 90s. He's been at Keenan for that long. He's won multiple state championships. He's always got his team in contention. It's a difficult situation for him, difficult situation for the players. But he's making the most of it. I hope there's some sort of resolution soon to this whole thing. I will tell you, on the Watch 57 schedule, we have them next week against Newberry. So I will be at Keenan next Friday, and, we will definitely touch on the situation and figure out where we are as far as what the future holds. But right now, he's able to practice. He's able to come to practice. He can attend games. I think on Tuesday when Lou went over, he was sitting in the stands during the game. So he's there, and he's part of the program, but he just can't sit on the bench and coach during games.
One more for you here again, Chris Deering, joining us on the AAA Heating Air phone lines. We'll go back to football here as we've already signed the class of 2026, but looking ahead to 2027, Jaden Bryant, a five-star edge out of Irmo, has officially decided he is going to commit to the LSU Tigers in Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, he committed to LSU a couple weeks back, or last week, I think it was. And the big deciding factor there was, I think, the relationship he had with Sterling Lucas, who was at South Carolina and left and took the job at LSU under Lane Kiffin. Jaden Bryant was very close to him, feels very comfortable with him as a coach, and decided to go ahead and commit. And that's obviously a big get for LSU out of the Midlands. And I always say I don't think players should follow coaches because he might not be there the whole 4 years or 5 years, however long you're on campus. But it does happen, and that sort of transitions into another thing that we probably don't have time to get into today. But I mentioned this with Bill last week. The transfer portal is, even from last Friday to this Friday, we've seen several kids in the high school ranks elect to change schools. And speaking of that, Irmo School, one of their top players, Amir White, their running back, really good, talented junior, has transferred to Gaffney. The number one player in the class of 2027, the receiver out of Summerville, Jaden Kelly Murray, he is transferred to Oceanside Collegiate. So there's a lot of movement, in some of my conversations with some of the prep writers across the state during the week. I basically said we won't know teams' schedule or roster makeup until August.
Right.
It's going to change greatly between now and then. We'll see kids probably transferring all throughout the school year, and then when we get to the summer, we'll see it happen again. And so we won't know what rosters look like until August when they start practice.
That's the reality of every level of sports, it seems like, at this point, unfortunately. Chris, man, we appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yep, sounds good. Y'all have a great weekend, Tyler, and talk to you then.
All right, you too. And Chris Deering joining us there on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. We'll talk some national championship coming up next. Scott Hamilton will join me for the rest of the show as the Friday edition of the Halftime Show rolls on here in the game. It's all right here for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialists. I tell you about it all the time, but I'll remind you once again, if you've got an open crawl space under your home and have experienced a storm, hey, there's some rain and possibly snow coming in this weekend that could lead to standing water underneath your home. And I don't need to tell you that standing water underneath your home is bad, because it is. It can lead to a litany of problems like mold and mildew. It can even invite pests like termites into your home as well, which absolutely do not want. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist come in. If you go online and schedule an appointment today at cantyconvicts.com, they'll send a professional out to your home to evaluate your foundation issues and get them fixed so you and your family can live worry-free going forward. Again, do not let those crawl-space issues get out of hand. Go online to schedule an appointment at cantyconvicts.com and let our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist help you out. So we're working to effort. There we go. Got Scott Hamilton on now. Scott, how we doing, man? Long time no talk. Well, when you were on last time, I could barely talk, so I wouldn't say those were the best conversations a week and a half ago.
They were okay. I mean, you were playing hurt.
Yeah, that was my flu game. I think you said that.
So you did well. You did very well.
Well, the voice is back. I went through an ungodly amount of cough drops, chicken broth, hot tea, honey, all that kind of stuff. So we're back in good shape now and ready to go. As man, unfortunately, we've only got one more college football game left to go. Monday night, we'll crown a national champion. It seems like just yesterday we were watching week 0 with Iowa State and Kansas State over in Dublin, where Avery Johnson's dad and brother got in that weird fight after the game. But you blink and boom, Miami national championship. We're almost done.
Yeah, I mean, and who saw this coming? Honestly, who can say, if anybody says they saw this coming, I am backing away. They're about to explode into fire. I mean, nobody saw this coming. Nobody. I mean, Miami. I didn't even see Miami coming. I thought Miami would make the playoff, and they did, though it was kind of convoluted how they did it. But to live in a world where we have Miami playing Indiana for the national championship, and Indiana is more than a touchdown favorite. What? How long was I asleep?
Yeah, it's one of those things that if you went into a coma, I don't know, even 3 years ago, you wouldn't have believed any of what's going to take place on Monday night. And, you know, the Indiana thing is so interesting because last year, of course, you could poke holes and say, all right, well, they played an easier schedule. When they played Ohio State, they lost. When they got in the playoff and played Notre Dame on the road, they lost. You could say, all right, that's just a team that, you know, benefited from not having to play a bunch of tough opponents. And not that we should have expected them to suddenly fall off the face of the earth and become a 2 or 3 win team again. But you could say, you know what, if Indiana ended up going 8-4 this year, that seems kind of on par. You know, maybe they're in the Citrus Bowl or something like that. And that's still really good for the standard of what that program has been. And I really think it was the Oregon game for a lot of people where they said, oh, wait a minute. No, this is actually a real thing. This team is really good. They went on the road to Eugene, beat what we thought was one of the favorites for the national championship in Oregon, and then did that same thing against Ohio State. The Big Ten championship game, road graded both Alabama and Oregon again in their 2 respective playoff games, and now are one of the heaviest favorites we've seen in the BCS/college football playoff era national championship.
Oregon game was the biggest game in the history of Indiana football up to this one.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm going to say that. And I agree with you 100%. 8-4, Tyler, would have validated last year. 8-4. Everything they did last year was great, but people were still foo-fooing it because the schedule wasn't the strongest.
Yeah.
And the way they got curb stomped in the college football playoff by Notre Dame, okay?
Right.
To turn around and go 8-4 with Kevin O'Rourke gone, your quarterback. You've got a guy coming from Cal. Okay, you got that. To go 8-4 against that schedule would have been a heck of a season, and people would be. It's like Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt had a good year this year. They didn't make the playoff, but people are still celebrating and saying, "What a wonderful year!" Would have been the same in Indiana. But what they've achieved since then, I mean, did you watch the Penn State game? Right,
I did. Yeah.
I came out of that thinking, okay, this Indiana team is very, very good, but this is not a national championship quality team. Each week I got shown I was wrong. This is not only a national championship quality team, but I've been on some other shows the last week or two. I'm trying to figure out where they are in the hierarchy of all-time great squads.
See, I looked at the Penn State game as what we typically see with every team that eventually goes on to win the national championship, well, they have a struggle game, right? And look, you're playing, for Indiana's sake, a 16-game season. You're not going to blow everybody out. You're not going to dominate everybody. And we've seen in years past, Ohio State lost to Michigan last year in embarrassing fashion before going on the run to win the national championship. When Georgia had their perfect season a couple of years ago, they had to come back and survive on the road at Missouri in the middle of that season. So I wasn't as perturbed by the Penn State game. For one, that's a really talented Penn State team, right? I know that was post James Franklin firing, but that wasn't a bad roster by any means. So that was a team that was capable, especially in Happy Valley, of giving Indiana a game. I think that was a game that legitimized Fernando Mendoza in a lot of people's eyes because for the first time in his at least Indiana career, he faced the adversity of having to go out there and make a big play at the end of the game, finds Omar Cooper at the back of the end zone. That was ended up being kind of his Heisman-defining moment, for the entire year. And has obviously put up ridiculous numbers and played lights out. He has 5 incompletions and 8 touchdowns in the 2 playoff games that he's played. Like this, he's playing at an unreal level right now, and he's just the most happy-go-lucky Boy Scout he could be about it.
He's unbelievable. But my point is, coming out of Penn State, one of the all-time great teams. You don't look at a team that needs a touchdown in the final seconds, a tiptoe touchdown in the back of the end zone, and say, "Oh, that's one of the all-time great teams." That automatically would be a disqualifier. But the more I see them, they're unbelievable. And Mendoza, he epitomizes everything the Heisman is about. I'm surprised now, in hindsight, saying there was ever a debate. And what do we do about Curt Cignetti at this point? Could we? And maybe we're prisoners of the moment. Maybe this is, hyperbole. Could we now say he is on the Mount Rushmore of great talent evaluators in the history of sports?
I think that might be a little prisoner of the moment. I still think the sample size is small at the highest level of college football. But I'll say this, and again, he's in his 60s right now, so let's say he coaches for another decade. I don't think Indiana's going to suddenly fall off, with the talent that they lose this year, I think, and they do have the funding of the helpful Mark Cuban to help out with this as well. But Indiana's not going anywhere, and that's what this season legitimized for so many people, that last year wasn't a fluke. Yes, last year's team was not as good as this year's team is, but they still won 11 games, made the playoff and all that kind of stuff, and got better this year. And again, Cignetti, if there was any coach that is made in the mold of Nick Saban, it is Curt Cignetti. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of people in Tuscaloosa who say, man, maybe we should have hired this guy instead of Kalen DeBoer, because he kind of seems to carry the legacy of what, Nick Saban did, perhaps better than anyone is as of right now. So, yeah, I don't think Cignetti's going anywhere. Mount Rushmore's and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a little too early to start having those kind of discussions, but it wouldn't shock me if we are at that point here in a couple of years.
I just think what he's done in 2 years by identifying what's in the back of the refrigerator to make a wonderful recipe is something that we've never seen it before. We've never seen this before.
No, we haven't.
And these aren't 5 stars. He is putting together the island of misfit toys.
Half this roster was
on the threshold of a national title.
Half this roster was JMU players 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And who wanted Mendoza? He came from Cal. Okay, I didn't see Miami throwing $6 million at him.
I will say his name was rumored about quite a bit in the offseason of where he would go. And look, he was at Cal, and they ended up going 6-6 last year, so it wasn't a great season. But I think there was a lot of thought of him being a good quarterback prospect. I don't think anybody saw this coming necessarily, but I don't think he was looked at as just part of the scrap heap or something like that.
It's just absolutely incredible, and they know who they are, they know what they want to do, and they go about it.
Yeah,
and win. And they play with that edge of being rejected by the rest of society.
And honestly, it's kind of mesmerizing to watch, right? Like, for one, I have them picked to win the national championship, but I watch them play Alabama in the Rose Bowl. I watch them play Oregon in the Peach Bowl the other week, and I'm like, well, how many points can they put up? Just how dominant of a win can they have? It's almost a morbid curiosity of how badly they can bludgeon their opponents, and I'm going to have that same curiosity on Monday night against Miami.
I agree, because this will be an interesting test, because Miami fancies itself to be a front-to-back team molded in the image of its coach.
Mm-hmm.
This is a chance for Miami to prove that it really belonged in the playoff and that it is a rough-and-tumble squad, but also for Indiana to say, you know what? We really are the most physical team in the country. Here it is. Let's
get into Miami a little bit more on the other side and kind of examine the dynamic of what their storyline is going in this matchup and where their advantages might be in this matchup against Indiana as we continue to break down the national championship. He is Scott Hamilton. I'm Tyler Head, Captain Dave, producing on the other side of the glass on your Friday on the halftime show here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Scott Hamilton along with you here on your Friday on the game, getting you set for a full football weekend. That'll culminate with the national championship coming up on Monday night between Indiana and Miami. Dave, do we have that cut ready to go there? What? Okay. We talked about India in that last segment. Miami playing a home game. It'll be in their own stadium down there at Hard Rock in South Beach, though not specifically on campus, but still going to be a huge Miami contingent. And Mario Cristobal was asked earlier on this week if there's any distractions playing this national championship at home.
There aren't really distractions. You either create them or you don't, right? It's people. And so we get out ahead of that, right? That's one of the stronger, I would say, points of emphasis as you begin the week. You know, distractions and things and people have never been a part of the journey. You can't let them become a part of it now. I mean, from the simplicity of getting an email to parents as to, hey, take care of tickets by tomorrow because we don't want your sons running around and trying to figure other things out. They already have school, right? We have to prepare for an awesome opportunity. We preach it, we teach it, and then we go and we get away from everybody, just like we did a couple of weeks ago, the last couple of weeks when we went on the road. And that's where I know the process was asked about earlier. It's no different. You just got to shut out the outside world a little bit.
I am intrigued to see what this crowd split's going to look like for this game because, again, you have a game quite literally in Miami. So a lot of Miami fans there, but you also have Indiana fans who will be willing to give an arm and a leg for an opportunity to see a national championship that they, in their minds, may never, ever see again because they certainly didn't expect to be here at this point. And I don't know how much effect that's going to have on the game, but the crowd dynamic of this is going to be one of the interesting things to see when this thing kicks off.
Miami people, they're going to come. But the Indiana people are really going to come. I mean, the way they took over everything else up until this point is absolutely incredible. Here's one thing I need. I need a Michael Irvin cam.
Yes. Well,
mic him up, put him camera, and just have it. Because they've got all those other things going. They got the coaches' room.
Ooh, a UCast. Well, you got friends at the ACC network. Call them up and say, hey, we need a UCast, mic up Michael Irvin, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed. I'm sure Greg Olson's going to be down there. Get all these guys with a microphone and camera, and let's get their, and you may have to censor some stuff, let's get their genuine reactions to what's happening.
I was talking with Dave Clawson the other day, former head coach of Wake Forest, and he's going to be on that coach's room again. Which
I do like those.
I love that. I remember the first year they did it, and it was David Cutcliffe, who was basically the schoolmaster.
Yes,
everybody deferred to Coach Cutcliffe. Just absolutely great guy, wonderful football coach. You had Jimbo was in there. Some other people were in there, but also Mike Gundy was in there. And I remember Mike Gundy had two cups. He had a water cup, clear cup of water, and he had a Yeti. I always wondered what was in that Yeti. Why did he need two? Because nobody wanted to be in that room less than Mike Gundy.
Probably some liquid courage in that Yeti cup. I would imagine quite a bit of venture to think. He's doing one of the. Is he on that same show with Clawson for Monday night? He's doing one of the panels.
Let me ask him. I'll ask Dave.
Yeah, I saw that pop up somewhere that Gundy's going to be a part of that some kind of way. So that'll be entertaining to watch nonetheless. But, we talk about Indiana trying to wrap up one of the best seasons in college football we've ever had. And Miami, as much as Mario Cristobal has tried to dodge the question, trying to see if the U's really back. And look, we've made that joke for years now since Miami was truly last in the national spotlight with the, controversial national championship loss against Ohio State, back in the 2002 season. But, there have been flashes and glimpses of them returning to glory, but this is the closest they've ever gotten, right? Mario Cristobal, one of their own, was a part of some of those great teams going back into the, back in the 1990s, and he has an opportunity to bring his alma mater back to the top of college football.
This is an incredibly personal journey for Mario Cristobal. I mean, he left a good job, dude, at Oregon.
Sure.
A really good job. They ran off a pretty good coach to bring him home. I mean, I think Manny Diaz is an excellent football coach. I do. And I'm so glad he landed at Duke. But it's gone a little longer than it took, than they expected it to take, rather, when Mario Cristobal came aboard. Part of it could be the whole John Ruiz thing where, what was it, Life Wallet or Safe Wallet or whatever, had bankruptcy issues, and they were funding the majority of the NIL and this, that, and the other.
Yep.
But for Miami to be back in this position, does it validate what we've been saying over and over for years? The U is back. I mean, just being in the national title game, does that warrant saying, okay, they are back?
I mean, in the short term, yes. I think you have to sustain that success because if let's say you win on Monday night and then you go 7-5, 8-4, and 5-7 the next 3 years, that's not really being back. Like being back, much like the thing we talk about with Texas and the joke of, oh, is Texas back or not? You got to stay towards the top of the sport. If not playing for national championships, being in that realm of competition every single year. And I'd firmly say that Texas is back to that. Again, they've been in the semifinals a couple times and didn't get there to the playoff this year, but still one of the better teams in the SEC. And that's kind of what Miami is shooting to be like Texas, to where you're back in that realm of being considered one of the top 5 to 8 teams in the country every single year.
Is Texas are Texas and Miami, are they the college football equivalents of the Dallas Cowboys?
I think so. And look, the joke about Miami as well, their fans don't go to their own games. And that's true a lot of the time. When they're good, they do, because there is a lot of casual, fair weather Miami fans that I imagine may not have paid attention a whole lot in the past couple of years. When they heard the U was good this year, probably dusted off that gold chain and got themselves down to Hard Rock Stadium. And there'll probably be a lot of them out there coming up on Monday night.
That gold chain. We haven't talked about the turnover chain in a bit. They were the first ones.
They were. It was right about a decade ago when Rick got there, I think is when that trend kind of started. And now everybody's got a turnover props. Maybe it's not. They still have it, right? They still do that?
Yeah, you remember Butch Jones at Texas had to turn over trash can?
Yeah, we got turn over trash cans, tires. One school has the pimp cane and the coat. I think that's cool.
Yeah, sure.
Alabama's got the belt. Yeah, but the U did start. And see, here's the thing. Talking about the U being back, there was that tease, right? A decade ago, the 2017 season, I believe it was, when they won, I think, 10 games, were in the mix for the ACC and kind of, I think, lost a couple games down the stretch there at the very end. But that was kind of the first inkling of, oh, hey, wait a minute, maybe they're onto something. And then they weren't able to keep that success going. They've obviously taken a lot more steps forward here. And let's face it, if the ACC didn't have convoluted tiebreakers, probably would have won the ACC in the process too. But the national championship, obviously far more important than that.
A little bit. And here's another thing. Keep this in mind. This could be beneficial to Miami in numerous ways. First of all, just the satisfaction of playing for a national championship, possibly winning a national championship. They're going to get $20 million.
Yes.
They get to keep all that thanks to their partners who sued the ACC. They don't have to allocate that to the other members now. They're also getting $3 million to travel. They're playing a home game. Well, so Miami's going to clear $23 million by being in this game that they can put. That's basically house settlement revenue money in it. You can max out $21.5 million.
Yeah, for the revenue, for the rev share alone. Obviously, NIL can go way over that. But yeah, they're quite literally going to hit their rev share cap for next year for playing on Monday night.
So it's like having, next year subsidized.
Yeah.
By the success of this year, and you can build off of that.
Yep.
But here's the thing though. Let's say they get boat raced. Let's say they get the Kurt Signetti, we score till the end of the game.
Mm.
What happens then?
Well, they're going to lose a lot of talent, obviously, in the offseason. And we'll see. I know they've obviously been active in the portal as everybody else has. I'm sure they're going to bring in a lot of high-level guys that they can pay top dollar, top dollar for. They get Vendrevious Jacobs from South Carolina, one of them, for sure. So we'll see. I expect them to continue to contend at the top of the league and be in this mix for a couple years to come. But winning the national championship, I think, silences a lot of doubters for a while to come if they're able to pull this off. But, we'll see. They got 60 more minutes of football to prove it.
I know we're going to circle back to women's basketball next hour, but do you want to hear a cool sliding doors moment regarding Miami football?
Go for it.
Okay. Caitlin Clark, and this is out on social media. Check this out.
All right.
Caitlin Clark dropped 41 points on Haley Van Lith when she was playing at LSU.
Right.
Roger. That Haley Van Lith, she basically became a meme because she was traumatized from that.
Right.
Transfers to TCU. Now, who else had committed to TCU at that time? Haley Cavender.
Ooh, that's right.
Okay. But when she sees that another ball-dominant guard was going to TCU. She backs off and she stays at Miami, and she tells her sister Hannah, who had also committed to TCU, to stay with her. She's dating Carson Beck.
She was. They broke up.
Correct.
Yeah.
But Carson Beck at the time, smitten,
Yes.
looking for a new home, and also a $6 million payday, goes to Miami.
There you have it. Caitlin Clark is responsible for Miami being back in the national championship in football. Case closed there. We'll come back, wrap up the hour. What's this game going to look like coming up on Friday night? We'll get into that next. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Scott Hamilton, Captain Dave on your Friday on the game. Welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler Head, Scott Hamilton, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Friday on the game. We'll get back into what happened last night at Colonial Life Arena with women's basketball coming up at the top of the 2 o'clock hour. Lulu Casson of the Greenville News going to talk with us about what she witnessed over there in person. South Carolina picked up the 68-65 win over number 4 Texas. A very important game in terms of the standings in the SEC and South Carolina's pursuit of another national championship. But we're talking about the college football playoff national championship right now for Indiana and Miami coming up on Monday night. Indiana, the 8.5-point favorite. Again, undefeated on the season. Miami's been playing some lights-out football themselves in albeit tighter games so far in the playoff. I mean, which way does this game go for you? Is this a game that Indiana can just step on the gas and run away with? Is it a tight game? Does it come down to the very end like the Fiesta Bowl did between Ole Miss and Miami? What's your feeling vibe for what we're going to see on Monday?
I am of the belief that Miami is going to try to just assert its will physically for much of the game. Miami's run game is really underrated, dude. Really underrated. What's the running back? Mark
Fletcher.
Mark Fletcher Jr.
Yeah, sure.
6'2", about 230. Got some Derrick Henry vibes to him, and he's gotten better with each week during the postseason. I really see him being critical to this, and how Indiana does against him will really determine a whole lot. I mean, if they get into the second half and he's having success, I can see Miami winning this. I really can. But if they stop him and have to rely on Carson Beck, God love his heart, I know he's done better, it could get ugly fast. So, in other words, I'm putting it on the shoulders of Mark Fletcher to determine which way this game goes.
And look, you're not wrong for thinking that. Malachi Tony, obviously a big part of that offense as well. And Miami's not been in, like, significant holes in the playoffs so far. Yeah, they had to go down and score late against Ole Miss, but that was a one-score game. Nobody's really gotten away from Miami because of how good that defense has played. And give Carson Beck credit. He's had a really, really strong postseason so far. Only had the one interception against Ole Miss back there in the Fiesta Bowl. But this is an Indiana team that could be up 14, 17 points, halfway through the third quarter, to where that pressure gets squarely on Carson Beck's shoulders. And we saw from his time in Georgia, we saw when they were playing against Louisville from behind, when they were playing against SMU going on to lose that game, that's when he starts to press, and that's when he starts to make his mistakes. And that's where I think the difference in this game could come if all the pressure gets put on Carson Beck. Can he go out there and make those plays to get Miami back in it?
You bring up an interesting point, though, about Indiana jumping out to those quick leads. Those are fueled by defense primarily. We had the pick six.
Yes, the first play.
First play of the last game, and then I think they fumbled next possession, or it might have been another interception. Either way, more Indiana points. How does Carson Beck stand up to that? I know Carson Beck's been in school for 8,000 years. He should be a doctor by now.
Feels like it.
But how does he do under that kind of pressure? I think he does okay, but we've also seen stretches this year, man, where he would just throw interceptions in clusters.
Yeah.
How does he do it against a physical front like Indiana?
Again, the Louisville game, he's credited with 4 interceptions. One got overturned on a roughing the passer. He's then proceeded to throw another one to make up for it. So, yes, they do come in bunches. Did the same thing when he was at Georgia a couple seasons ago. And, again, I give him credit for, especially for using his feet as effectively as he did in that game against Ole Miss the other week. But this is going to be a test for him. And I do wonder if the adversity is up against him, if he can lead his team to a comeback. And similarly, again, we used the Penn State example earlier, but Indiana's not really found themselves in holes either. And I don't think Miami's going to put them in one necessarily, but if the ball bounces a couple weird ways, fumbles, picks, whatever it may be, and let's say Indiana's down 14 or 17, I mean, I have confidence that Fernando Mendoza can bring them back. We just haven't seen him have to do that this season.
That's because you don't rattle him.
You don't.
You don't rattle him. You'll get to him. You'll frustrate him a little bit. You might speed him up, but he files one play away so quickly. As soon as he gets back up, it's filed away and it's gone. And they do so many things that are hard to, like, okay, this is the best, and I will say this with 100% conviction. This is the best back shoulder throwing team I have ever seen.
Okay, that's fair.
Period. And if you can pull off something like that on a consistent basis confidently, that is an incredible weapon. And think of the pressure that puts on a defense to not only have to cover that, but then those guys behind them, that puts more pressure on them. And when you know you have that in your bag, when you can pull that out when you need it, that makes you dangerous. That makes you a champion.
Yep.
I think we're going to see some high-level play on Monday night from Mendoza. Miami's defensive backs better be at the same level.
And we'll get, I'm sure, an impassioned Boy Scout speech after the game if Mendoza wins and wins the MVP or something like that.
Don't forget to to donate to your local PETA, and also I want to make sure, hey, recycle.
Yeah,
let's take care. This
Why
is
not?
one Earth, and we share it all. Let's recycle, people.
Say your prayers, eat your vitamins, recycle, love your neighbor, all those kind of things. And I'm sure we'll be on the Rolodex for Fernando Mendoza after the game, and we'll see how Signetti responds if he does ultimately accomplish the ultimate goal of having the perfect season, win the national championship. We'll mention this more as the show goes along, but coming up next in hour number 3, Lulu Keston of the Greenville News going to join us to recap last night's women's basketball win over number 4 Texas as South Carolina picks up a huge win early on in SEC play. That's up next. It's Halftime Show. Tyler Head, Scott Hamilton, Captain Dave on the game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Scott Hamilton, Captain Dave along with you on your Friday as we get you through your final hour before a fun football weekend, which we'll talk more about a little bit later on in the hour. But the news of the day here locally, of course, is what happened last night over at Colonial Life Arena with South Carolina women's basketball taking down number 4 Texas, getting their lick back from that loss back on Thanksgiving night out in Las Vegas. And a vitally important one here because it is a conference game that other one wasn't. Joining us now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines to discuss last night's game from the Greenville News is Lulu Keston. Lulu, appreciate you being available on short notice. How are we doing today?
I'm good. Thank you guys for having me. Happy to be here.
First question, bigger pop from the crowd last night. Ali Turnabais coming off the bench or Medina Okot making her 3 late in the game?
Ooh, that's a good question. The fun thing about the Okot 3, it was kind of a mix of like at first, like kind of groans and hesitation, like, oh, should she shoot that shot at that moment? And then the crowd kind of went crazy. But I think Tornaby's checking in. That was a reaction that it's been a while since CLA has sort of been that loud.
Scott, go ahead. Oh, hold on. Scott's got to turn his microphone on. Anyways, last night's game, obviously important. Again, this is a team in Texas that South Carolina has seen 5 prior times since the beginning of last year. Do you attribute that as to why maybe the early parts of the game were so sloppy with the turnovers and everything like that? These two teams just knew each other so well and were able to force so many mistakes?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great point. I mean, Raven Johnson sort of said it best after the game, like, they know our plays, we know theirs. Obviously, it forces you to get really creative and play your best basketball, but I think it was just 2 really, really defensively sound teams battling, and they've seen each other, this 5 times before in a calendar year, which is rare. So, yeah, exactly to your point, just really high-level defense combined with a pretty extensive knowledge of what the other team can do.
Yeah, I mean, that was an absolutely ridiculous number of turnovers. I have to think that the paint was coming off the walls of both locker rooms at halftime.
Yeah, kind of really disgusting to watch, honestly. Just, you tip your cap to the defense in some ways, but at the same time, like, there were a lot of self-inflicted errors. Just sort of, I think the 2 just level of defenses forced the offense to speed up a little bit in some ways. And I think that both teams kind of were playing into the crowd, into the moment, and making some sort of dumb mistakes at times. And then others, you know, like I said, you tip your cap to the defense for forcing some risky passes here and there.
Was that something that Don talked about maybe in the post game, that they were getting above their skis on offense, that they needed to take a beat and run through their sets and just slow things down and go at their pace rather than trying to keep up with Texas, or because they were just so pressured by Texas that it made them a little anxious?
Yeah, I think like in the past, for example, when they had 21 turnovers against Florida not long ago, Don was like, they totally sped us up. Whereas I think it was a little bit more of South Carolina was looking to maybe do too much in moments, and ultimately in a game, like, each possession matters. And I sort of saw some of the turnovers that they had as moments where if this was a game against, you know, a non-conference opponent and they were up 30, I would see or expect Don to kind of, you know, wave her hand and sort of give the, I saw what you were trying to do there thing. But it was an intense time where, you know, it's a lot of heightened pressure and each turnover matters. But I think that Texas sort of threw off their rhythm, especially with the press, and Don recognized that they were sort of trying to do too much on offense instead of just simply playing their game once they broke out of the full court pressure.
Again, talking to Lulu Keston of the Greenville News here, recapping last night's South Carolina women's basketball 68-65 win over Texas. And we can get specifically into the last 5 minutes of the game coming up here in just a moment. But I thought of equal importance was the way they closed out the first half. Latson with a couple steals and a few points. Joyce with a steal and a foul that was able to tie with her 2 free throws to make it a 32 all game going into the half. I mean, look at the numbers. Texas shot 50% in the first half. Carolina shot 34%. But because Texas had so many turnovers, Carolina was able to get more shots off. And I thought, just from a momentum standpoint, despite not playing great in the first half, having that tie really did a lot for Carolina in the way they came out in the second half.
Absolutely, and it says a lot about a team's maturity and sort of to able to recognize, okay, like, things are not going. I mean, South Carolina 23% in the first quarter. Things weren't looking great for and it's tough when you're getting quality shots and not hitting them. That's a knock to your confidence. That's a knock to the rhythm. So I think it says a lot about South Carolina that not only they pulled out the win solely based on some execution in the fourth, but also that they overcame sort of a bad shooting night. And it wasn't just, two teams kind of going at it. South Carolina had some work to do, especially in the second quarter, which sort of feeds into the level of just sort of, okay, this win says a lot about the maturity of a South Carolina team that in some ways is still kind of young.
I see 12 points for Tania Latson, 5 of 9 from the floor, but she missed all 3 shots from three-point range. That's a good but not great game, which is really all she needs to have when you're on a team like South Carolina. How has she been able to get integrated into this offense, and how is she handling not putting up the kind of numbers she did last year at Florida State when she led the nation in scoring?
Yeah, both Latson and Dawn sort of made it clear that, like, of course, it's going to be a mental adjustment when you average 21 or more the last 3 years. But the reality is she's not going to take that many shots in the WNBA, and she came to South Carolina to be more efficient and to shoot the shots that she needs to take and that can take, at the next level. So I think that a lot of people like to sort of pick out the maybe drop in the actual points she's averaging per game. But that said, the things she's doing at South Carolina are a lot closer to what she's going to do at the professional level than the last 3 years at Florida State. So it's working on her defense, which I've seen a lot of improvement on, but also making sure that, when she's taking these shots on offense, it's not, I'm the only one who can take them. It's, okay, this is a really great opportunity for me to be the one to score right here because she's playing with really great players around her. So it's sort of been a slow burn throughout the non-conference play, just adjusting her. And then obviously spraining your ankle is a little bit of a disruption to sort of your flow with a new team. But I found the last 2 games that she's, exactly to your point, just doing what she needs to do. And I think that's going to come across more impressive to WNBA scouts than putting up 25 in a game where you either win or lose by 40.
And on that injury to Tania Latson, of course, returned against Georgia on Sunday. The whole team didn't play their best game on Sunday, but she was a little bit rusty herself specifically. What is the difference you saw between her on Sunday and her last night as she gets reacclimated to playing again?
Yeah, well, I wasn't in Vegas when they lost to Texas, but on the broadcast, you could sort of see she was a little distraught. I think it was probably it was South Carolina's first loss, but first big loss for Latson. And so I was very curious to see, based on how she played Sunday, how she was going to come out this time around. I think she just kind of had an edge in the fire to her. I think in those situations, yes, she's new to the SEC, but she's a mature player. And I felt like she really recognized maybe when to push, when to pull back. And she kind of helped Raven get the flow going, especially when Raven wasn't on the court. And that's really big. Defensively, you can't really leave any of these Texas players open, especially Jordan Lee, who had, I think, 16, maybe 19 against South Carolina last time. And I thought that Latson really just understood the moment and what was at stake and didn't try to do too much, which was nice considering, like you said, not everyone had their best game coming into it, which always is like, okay, how is this game going to go?
And how would you grade Joyce Edwards last night? Or more importantly, how did Dawn, if she did, grade Joyce Edwards? Because I'm looking at her line. I see 14 points, but on 3 of 11 shooting. I see 8 rebounds, but 6 turnovers. But here's another one. 38 minutes from Joyce Edwards, only 2 fouls. That might be the best part of this whole line score for her.
Yeah, I would argue that Joyce took 6'6" Kyla Oldacre out of the game when she was in there too, especially because Medina Okot was pressured with them screening and switching, and people were moving around. I thought South Carolina handled the screens from Texas really well. But with Joyce, she gets a lot of contact, yes, but I think too something that she's trying to work on and Dawn's trying to work on is, like, it's okay to make the extra pass. You're not any less of a player if you're not the one taking a shot in that moment. And there are times where it needs to be Joyce taking the layup, but there's also times where she needs to realize an assist is just as good as a make or a miss in that moment. Something that I recognized was Raven Johnson, basically, like, the second that Tessa was called for a charge to start the fourth quarter, the fans were, crazy mad at the refs. Like, that's a moment where the game could really get away from you if you focus on the mistake there. Raven, next play down, she found Joyce, knew the refs were going to call it tight, got her to the line. She made 2 free throws, and then goes on to have 6 points in the fourth quarter that were really, really big, along with Johnson's stats as well. I thought that Joyce kind of came alive in the fourth when she needed to. It's tricky when you're playing a team that's, both teams played really physical, and the refs kind of were calling stuff, not really calling stuff. I think Joyce did a good job on defense, and I think offensively, sure, I think she should come alive maybe a little bit early, but the fourth quarter, what she did, I thought was really, really, really big.
A couple more minutes here with Lulu Keston of the Greenville News talking about South Carolina women's basketball's win over Texas last night. You mentioned Raven and her 6 points there in the fourth quarter. Obviously, some tough buckets she got going up against Rory Harmon, and then about the last minute of the game there. And perhaps the biggest moment of the entire game was getting the inbound to Joyce there at the very end, because Texas had given them a lot of problems with that press of just trying to get the ball in and possibly forcing a turnover when you're up 3 there. So she gets into Joyce, and as South Carolina is able to salt the game away at that point. Did you understand why Texas didn't try and foul there to force Joyce to go to the line?
Yes and no. I think what I saw from that was Rory, after she had sort of made this really hard kind of lunge to the ball, it would have been sort of like, okay, now I got to turn around. And she was close enough to foul. I could have seen had she done that. But, it might have just sort of been an instance where Vic said in a timeout, like, if we don't get it here, don't foul. Like, it's out at this point, but I can't sit here and say for sure. And I don't think anyone asked Vic about it last night, but definitely a moment where in a tight game, it could have gone either way how Texas approached that.
And Lulu, I know we're closing out this segment with you, but I want to go ahead and take a look forward. South Carolina has Coppin State on Sunday, then a pretty tough stretch starting next Thursday at Oklahoma, number 13 Oklahoma, and then number 5 Vanderbilt, 18-0 Vanderbilt. Wow, coming to Columbia. Take away the turnovers that were created last night or maybe self-inflicted by South Carolina. What will be the point of emphasis for Dawn Staley, not only going into this Coppin State game, but going into next week's hard 2-game stretch?
Yeah, I think it'll be, like you said, the first kind of 2-game stretch back-to-back, some difficult opponents next week. I think it's good that they're playing Coppin State on the road, because it's not going to be an easy, non-conference home game where everyone loves them. It's going to be sort of a fun road environment that prepares them well to go, to Oklahoma, which will be tough. It's going to be more pressure on it. Oklahoma will all be, okay, how can South Carolina's forwards and centers play on defense? And then flip side, it's all about shutting down Michaela Blake's the star guard for Vanderbilt. So it'll sort of either expose or help two ends of South Carolina's spectrum there. And I think Dawn Staley's team will get a really good midseason test, similar to what LSU and Tennessee and Oklahoma and Texas did for South Carolina mid to late January last year. So a lot will come out from these games, because I think it'll test South Carolina on a sort of many different ways, in sort of ways they haven't been in the SEC yet, just because Texas, all 5 players had to be locked in, whereas, not saying anyone can't be this time, but Oklahoma and Vanderbilt are so different in the way that you have to defend both teams.
Lulu, last 60 seconds here. Where does the atmosphere last night at CLA rank for the ones you've been able to attend yourself here?
It's hard for me to say that anything was better than the LSU atmosphere last year, but I'd probably put this a close second to that. Kentucky end of year last year was also amazing, but I think they had the same saxophone player for both LSU and Texas, so I loved that regardless. That is awesome. She is Lulu Keston of the Greenville News. We appreciate you taking your time today, and I'm sure we'll have you on here as this season of South Carolina basketball, women's basketball, continues on. Thank you both for having me. Have a good weekend. Absolutely. Halftime show. He is Scott Hamilton. I am Tyler Head. We'll get into the news out of the transfer portal from South Carolina football. One going out and one coming in as the portal closes up today. That's coming up next here on the Halftime Show on the Game.
All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Scott Hamilton, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Friday on the game. We'll get back into what's happening on the field this upcoming weekend, but the transfer portal is alive and open. Well, it's at least open for a couple more hours. Today is the last day to enter your name into it. And South Carolina very busy in the transfer portal. Scott, we have a little bit of breaking news that's occurred in the last hour. That's the benefit of doing the afternoon show, is you get breaking news that happened. Not a shock, but Christian Clark, the running back from Texas, has officially committed to South Carolina out of the portal. He was on campus yesterday visiting. Again, that gives South Carolina 6 scholarship running backs. He joins the 2 that they've already gotten from Ohio State and Penn State so far. Definitely has more production than those 2 have had in their careers so far, but a good get for South Carolina to possibly round out the running back room.
Here's my take on it, and it's not going to be popular.
Okay.
By nature, the transfer portal is a hand-me-down business. Somebody's getting a hand-me-down, either, one side or the other of it. It's a hand-me-down. He's leaving Texas because he doesn't want to compete.
To a degree, that's true.
They have Hollywood Smothers coming in.
They did, because the other backs are leaving. So I think the expectation was that he would want to slide into maybe that number 1 role. They bring in Smothers, I think one other guy too, and he opts to go in the portal. I don't think we know enough about him up to this point. He had 100 yards in the Citrus Bowl a couple weeks ago against Michigan, which is a good outing against a good defense. But these guys are competing for playing time, man. And if you see an opportunity to go somewhere else where you don't have to compete, I mean, we may not like that from a personal standpoint, but that's just the nature of the business now.
And we also don't know how much South Carolina's offered him.
We don't know how much they offer anybody, right? All the NIL stuff is hearsay and speculation and all that. And, as much as I'd love for it to be above board like it is in every other professional league, that's not where we're at right now. Until we get a collective bargaining agreement, there's your drinking word for the day. We say that enough around here. We're never going to know what these deals are. It's truly, and that's what's also made some of these payments that we do know about so insanely high, because they're not a proper market. Like, you can quite literally ask for and command whatever you want because there's no set market for this stuff.
CBA. I will say, sticking on Texas for a moment, I have to think they're the big winners right now in the portal. Hollywood Smothers, Cam Coleman, from Auburn, giving Arch a weapon.
Arch coming back.
All in.
Arch coming back. That's huge.
Arch coming back. And here's another winner. Think about this. And I was talking to a couple of people about this. Dylan Raiola going from Nebraska to Oregon. And apparently he knew that Dante Moore was not going to go in the NFL draft.
Correct.
So he's going to voluntarily redshirt and develop. And then when Dante Moore presumably goes next year for the draft, Dylan Raiola will step up. When do we see adult decisions? That's an adult decision to go and develop, get better in position. Now, it helps when you're making, 6 figures.
Yeah.
But still, he could have made that at Nebraska.
Yeah, and look, Dante Moore did the exact same thing. He went from UCLA to Oregon, sat behind Dylan Gabriel willingly, took over the reins, and would have probably been one of the top 2 quarterbacks off the board if he decided to go to the NFL. He's coming back, and now Raiola, and again, he had the injury that took him out for the rest of this past year, but he's going to do the same thing. And look, Oregon obviously has a wealth of resources where they can pay substantial money for a quarterback that's not going to play a single snap with the anticipation that he's going to be your guy in 2027. Not every program has that luxury, and that is obviously going to go a long way in guys making those adult decisions, so to speak.
Well, and I think it also helps when you have a coach like Dan Lanning who's selling it.
Yes.
He's selling it. He's like, look, man, you're going to come here. You're going to win a lot of football games. We're going to make you better. You're going to be compensated. And it's counterintuitive to everything you hear. Guys want to get paid and want to play and get to the pros as quickly as possible.
Sure.
But somehow Dan Lanning has put this pitch together. He's polished it to where he can sell it to these guys. And that's why I have to think right now, the biggest winner of the 2026 transfer portal for 2027 rather, is Oregon.
Yeah. Well, and look,
they've got their quarterback position locked up. How many others? Clemson can't say that.
No, well, Clemson's got to figure out. Clemson's got to figure out what 2026 is going to look like. Is it Vizina? I don't know. He didn't set the world on fire in his one start this past year for Kay Klubnik, and in a way, it's almost like things are kind of reverting back to the norm to a degree, not all across the board, because what you're doing is essentially just like high school recruiting, right? You get a guy out of high school that's a highly touted prospect. You stick him behind a couple of guys on the depth chart so he can learn and develop. So by the time he's a redshirt sophomore, or a junior, or a senior, if he stays around that long, he's your next dude. It goes out there, balls out, goes on to the NFL and all that kind of stuff. And when you're a program with the resources like Oregon has, you can do that. Now, again, this isn't going to become the norm across the board, but a lot of high-level programs, the Oregons, the Texases, Michigan, Alabama, you name it, the top of the top, they're probably going to try and follow the same type of model, not just a quarterback, but a lot of positions if they can.
Isn't it kind of a bizarre, when you think about it, and work with me here for a moment, Tyler, isn't it kind of a bizarro Dabo formula?
In a way.
Instead of bringing in a high school kid, they're getting a kid out of the portal, and they're coaching him up. They're developing him.
Yeah.
It's the Dabo model, except not with a high school kid.
It's a deferred Dabo model, if you will, where, again, they didn't have to go through the high school recruiting process. They didn't have to get the rawest version of these guys out of high school. They have, like Dylan Raiola has been able to develop at Nebraska for a period of time, and now he's going to go to Oregon, a more polished quarterback than he would have been, when he came out of high school, and they'll take him, to whatever height is after that. Speaking of that, by the way, getting back to this news of Christian Clark committing to South Carolina out of Texas in the transfer portal, South Carolina is kind of doing something similar when it's with its running back room because, and look, Shane Beamer said it when it came to his press conference on early signing day, where he made the note of, hey, we haven't signed a running back in the past 2 cycles. That's unacceptable. Markel Blackwell, of course, let go from his job, and they go out and hire Stan Drayton. That's essentially what they're doing here with their portal ads of Jabari Coleman as well as Sam Williams-Dixon, 2 guys that didn't really play a whole lot this year that you bring in and kind of supplement as what you would have had in the prior couple of recruiting classes at the running back spot. Again, they've gotten some development already, including Jabari Coleman at Penn State under Stan Drayton, but your anticipation is these guys are going to fill those roles for the next couple of years, in addition to Clark as well, who is a freshman. So you're kind of deferring the same thing where you didn't have high running back recruiting the past 2 cycles. You're bringing guys in that were part of those cycles now to fill out your room.
Yeah, you're getting guys who have tape.
Yes.
At the FBS.
To some degree, yes.
But some is better than none. I mean, there's no speculation, because, well, he's at this high school and the competitions. No, you see. And then also you have coaches talking. No, this guy's a dude. Oh, you should see him in practice. They know what they're getting.
Yeah, they do. You also had Caleb Herring. That was the news yesterday with him coming over from Tennessee to the edge room, 4 sacks on the season. He's been in college for 3 years. More of a rotational guy. Did start a couple games at the very end of the year, but with Brian Thomas Jr. obviously running out of eligibility and moving on to the next steps of his career, one of the biggest questions on this team is who's going to be the opposite edge rusher to Dylan Stewart. While Dylan Stewart's going to be getting double and triple teamed, who can wreak havoc on the other side the way that Kennard and, to a degree, Brian Thomas Jr. have done this past couple years. And look, Caleb Herron's not being handed anything by coming here, but he's in the early running to be that guy this upcoming season.
Yeah, and it's a big hole to plug, no doubt about it, and you've got to be able to be good at that position. I'm wondering this. With the changes on offense and the coaching positions and all that, and yet Clayton coming back.
Yes.
But I'm wondering, though, are we going to see any schematic differences there, any philosophical changes there? Because it was a good year defensively, but it wasn't great. And it certainly wasn't like the year prior when the team was absolutely loaded. What are we going to see different, though, from a coaching side?
We'll see. And Torian Gray assumes the role of co-defensive coordinator now as well. That comes with the raise and all that kind of stuff. You obviously lose Sterling Lucas, bring in Deion Barnes as your edge coach. So a lot of things have changed, not to mention the literal personnel that you have on the field is going to look a little bit different. And look, we gave the defense credit because they kept them in a lot of games last year. The offense just wasn't good enough to be able to capitalize on that. And we hope that they take the step back in the direction of what they were 2 seasons ago, to complement what we think is going to be an exciting offense.
No, I agree. I agree. I just know things have to be better all the way around.
They absolutely do. It's a pivotal year for Coach Beamer and, quite frankly, the future of this program. So we'll see. But it's been a very active portal cycle for Carolina. Again, today, the last day to enter your name in the transfer portal. We'll see if any other names come in these last couple of hours. And, again, you can continue to get talent out of it over the next couple of days and weeks as well. It's also going to be an exciting weekend from an NFL standpoint. We'll take a look at the divisional round coming up next as the halftime show. Tyler Head, Scott Hamilton, and Captain Dave continues on your Friday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Scott Hamilton, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Friday on the game. Men's basketball, they're back in action tomorrow night as they take on Auburn. Tip at 6 o'clock on the road out there. Pregame coverage starting at 5:30 right here on 107.5 The Game. Then the women in action coming up on Sunday, as we talked about a little bit earlier with Lulu Kesson. Tip off at 12 on the road at Coppin State. Pregame coverage starting at 11:30 right here on 107.5 The Game as well. While those games are going on, a lot of action happening in the NFL this weekend too. As we get into the divisional round, real quick, Scott, if I remember, you said you were a Steelers fan. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Your thoughts on Mike Tomlin stepping down after 18 years at the helm?
He did a lot for the organization, but it was definitely time. I mean, you could point to he didn't have a losing record ever and this and that, but what are you then settling for? Mediocrity? You're celebrating mediocrity? And there were some of those years where, you know what, I wish they'd have lost 10 games. Help with the draft picks. I mean, and you're in this purgatory. You're either not going to make the playoff and you still get a bottom of the non-playoff team draft pick, or you do make the playoff and you have an early exit, which has happened for 9 years.
Yes.
8 years, whatever. I mean, it's just bad all the way around. He provided stability to organization, but it's time most certainly for a change, because the only thing, and I'll finish with this, Tyler.
Okay.
The only thing worse than being bad is being apathetic. At least being bad elicits an emotion. Mediocrity is just blah, and people don't invest in blah.
Do you know what the last year, and it's important to note, he did not get fired. He stepped away. Do you know what the last year was that the Steelers actually fired a head coach was?
It would have been 1969.
68. Well, I guess early 69 maybe is when the actual decision was made. But yeah, Bill Austin was the coach before Chuck Noll, and he was the last coach fired over 55 years ago.
It's absolutely incredible. It's a model organization. It's a pillar of stability, but it's, again, and I hate to beat Dabo up anymore, but it's almost loyalty to a fault. There comes a point where you have to make hard decisions, and sometimes that means making changes that impact other people.
And we're seeing it. Kyle Whittingham at Utah, that was a good, solid program, but they weren't taking that next step to being at the elite level or legitimately competing for national championships. Gundy, I know Oklahoma State had gone off the rails. Like, that was just a bad situation. They had to make that move, but he had also been there for 20 years. At some point, just being there for a long time and having good to moderate success, it runs out.
Gundy's was his own fault because he had failed. He was even more vocal than Dabo with regards to this new era.
Yeah, he despises it. He wants nothing to do with it.
Well, and he thought he was bulletproof. They will never fire me. I am Oklahoma State football. And granted, when you look at his resume, he played there, he's assistant there, he's been a coach there forever, winning as coach. No coach has ever had success there like him. I can see where he feels that way.
Sure.
But when T. Boone Pickens, the super booster, when he passed away, Gundy lost a lot of cachet. A lot. And then it didn't help with some of the things that went on during the Black Lives Movement and all that with his team, where he lost the locker room.
Right.
It wasn't a good look. I'm surprised, honestly, that he wasn't let go 4 or 5 years ago. Candidly.
Yeah, it certainly could have happened. And again, they've been trending in the wrong direction for a couple of years, but before him getting fired, obviously early on this year. But getting back to the NFL again, the Steelers on the lookout for a new head coach, John Harbaugh, looking to finalize his deal with the Giants. That should be done hopefully sometime here soon. It's been speculated about for basically the past day, and we'll see. I came across this tidbit. No coach has ever won a Super Bowl in 2 different stops. So he obviously won in Baltimore, but nobody's ever gone to a second team and won a Super Bowl.
The only one I can think of, Andy Reid took 2 to the Super Bowl, but he didn't win.
He didn't win the first one. They lost to the Patriots in 2004. But, yeah, Harbaugh's trying to do something that's never been done before in the NFL and win a second Super Bowl with a different team. And, look, a lot of young talent there on that Giants team. Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterbo, Abdul Carter, Malik Neighbors, all those guys. So he's going to have a good group to work with. And, look, I think John Harbaugh's a really good coach. I think, like Tomlin, it just kind of eventually runs its course where you're at, and we'll see what a new change of scenery does for him.
I remember Ron Rivera telling us when he got hired, 8 to 10 years. That's the max for any coach, realistically. And sure enough, he was fired 8 years into his tenure with the Panthers. And he's like, it happens. It happens. It gets stale. I can't think of any coach who would, look at Bill Belichick.
Sure.
That's a wonderful example. Eventually it gets stale. Vince Lombardi, he got stale at the end of his tenure. Bill Walsh, stale.
Yeah.
Tom Landry, they fired Tom Landry.
I know. Okay, listen, the Grim Reaper comes for everybody at some point. And when in terms of your coaching career at specific places, no matter how successful you have been. So again, we'll see who they end up hiring. Giants would be the first one to make a hire in this offseason cycle, and they're, again, closing on the deal with Harbaugh. Looking at this weekend slate of games, anyone that stands out to you as most fun, most interesting?
For the NFL?
Yes.
I'll be honest with you. I look at it, and I'm like, Bills, Broncos, just because of the Josh Allen factor, because he's basically a one-man game.
Sure. Right
now. How does that adapt to the Broncos in that altitude? Other than that, maybe the Rams and Bears, because I think I truly believe. I believe the Rams are the best team in the NFL right now, especially after watching them play the Panthers a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Was it last week?
It was last week.
Ago.
Yep.
But the Bears, man, there's something going on there. Something going on. Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson. I've got a feeling about the Bears.
They are definitely ahead of schedule, right? And look, whenever you hire a first-time head coach, you have no clue how long it's going to take, what it's going to look like. And you have a guy in Ben Johnson that's certainly gotten them way farther than anybody thought they would in year number one. But you're right, and maybe it has to do with the comeback wins they've had, including the one against the Packers this past weekend. They always kind of find a way, right? And look, Caleb Williams still has development to be done in the NFL. He still makes plenty of mistakes, threw some interceptions last week against the Packers. But when the chips are down, when it's late in the fourth quarter, he knows how to make plays, man. He knows how to throw just that kind of pass to find the guy open, to get him where they need to be. And look, they're going to have the advantage of the weather, too. It's going to be 18 degrees. I don't know if it's going to snow or not, but it's going to be pretty darn cold. And last I checked, it doesn't get that cold out in L.A.
No, it doesn't get that cold out in L.A. But I like Caleb Williams. He's starting to look like the guy he was coming out of college. He's starting to look like a Heisman Trophy winner. I'm buying stock in that, but I look at that Rams offense, just so many weapons. And when you have a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, who can just sit there and go through his progressions as quickly as he does, even under duress, that's valuable in the playoffs, dude.
Yeah.
Valuable.
Yeah, I think that has the potential to be the funnest game. If you want to just see smash mouth, grind it out, old school defense, you can watch the Texans and Patriots maybe play to a 6-3 final score if that's your cup of tea.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. I have to think. I'm blanking on the Patriots coach right now, Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, Vrabel.
Yeah, I have to think that would be definitely his cup of tea. That game they had the other night, that wasn't very palatable.
Yeah, they stuffed the Chargers in a locker for 4 quarters. Same thing that the Texans did to the Steelers, honestly.
God.
And I think it's interesting that these two teams are paired up with each other. And look, Drake May is playing at an MVP level, and maybe that offense is enough to overcome what the Texans do on defense. But, yeah, if you would take the under in this game, I wouldn't blame you.
You see, I'm not even thinking about NFL for this weekend. That tells you where my head's at.
Well,
I'm looking at college basketball. It's actually a pretty good weekend for college basketball.
A little harder to enjoy when Carolina's not playing well, and they've got a tough test on the road at Auburn. But yeah, we're getting into the thick of SEC play. A lot of good matchups, going on over these next couple weeks. And Vanderbilt's magic finally ran out. They lost to Texas the other night. But I'm intrigued to see how good this entire run for them in the SEC is and how they keep that going.
They've got that. You've got Georgia, which also lost to Ole Miss the other night.
Crazy overtime game.
And here's the one, though, to keep an eye on. Kentucky and Tennessee. This is because I have not had Tennessee on my AP ballot the last 2 weeks. Okay. I just couldn't do it because they had lost 3 of 4 and people kept voting for them. I'm like, why?
Right.
But then I watched them against A&M the other night, and I thought that was a really compelling game. I think A&M's a really good team. But the Kentucky game, I think we're finally going to see this roster that they spent $23 million on start to do and live up to expectations. The way they first half of LSU was absolutely atrocious. Second half was absolutely amazing. And then to make the play they had to make at the end, if they lose that game, their season is wrecked. It's done. Now, they've still got to upset people. They got to upset some people on the road starting this weekend at Tennessee just to make the NCAA tournament. But I think that's the switch. I'm actually buying Kentucky stock right now.
We'll see if that's a spark point for them under Mark Pope. Again, they got off to a little bit of a shaky start in SEC play, but big, crazy win the other night on the road there at LSU. We'll come back, wrap up the show, give our highlights and our national championship final thoughts as the halftime show continues here in the game. All right, welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler Head, Scott Hamilton. Captain Dave along with you here, wrapping up your Friday here on the game. Terry Ford, Jay Phillips will take you in the post-game show. Into the weekend reminder again, MLK holiday on Monday. We will not be here, so we won't get any more previewing of the national championship, and Bill will be back in on Tuesday, and we'll have the ability to react to what's the end of the college football season. You've covered a lot of college football in your life. With the final game notwithstanding, where does this season as a whole rank for you in terms of entertainment value, storylines, all that stuff?
It's upper third,
okay,
upper quarter. I mean, I don't have a ranking in front of me. That's a good. I should sit down and do that one day. But it's been compelling, man. I mean, it really has. And last year was compelling because it was the first year with a 12-team playoff and the mystery of what that would hold. We had a better idea this time around, but we also still had the mystery of how it would be different when they corrected the seating structure.
Right.
That was a bad deal last year. I am the first to admit I was wrong. I wanted an expanded playoff, but I thought that it would compromise the regular season, and I'm wrong. It's enhanced the regular season. The regular season, as incredible as this sounds, is so much better now because of the stakes in the playoff. Everything's about the playoff. Everything.
Yes.
It's not just, I want to make a bowl or I want to win the SEC. No, you want to win a national title. You want to get in the playoff. And by expanding to 12, I couldn't enjoy it more. And I will miss it terribly in about 6 days.
Yeah, look, I've had a blast. And going back to 2024, for one, it was first year of the 12-team playoff. There's a lot of mystery on how that was going to work out. But I think that was also the first season where parity really took off in this new NIL transfer portal era. And it's continued on. Like, I think we were more shocked by things happening in 2024 and less by it in 2025. But it kind of seems like that's what we're going to expect. There's going to be teams coming out of nowhere. There's going to be upsets. There's going to be teams that we think have bulletproof rosters that aren't even going to make the playoffs, like Texas this year. I just kind of think that's the new normal for college football, which is fun, exciting, and for those of us that work in the media realm, gives us plenty of things to talk about, which is awesome. But I now go into every single Saturday, and it's always been this way to a degree, but now seems like even more so, not knowing what to expect for a lot of these big games.
You know, I've seen a lot, and there have been years where, Kansas is good this year, which they were not that long ago under I think it was Mark Mangione was the coach.
Yeah, they went to that Orange Bowl.
Yeah, or Wake Forest is good this year. When they went to the Orange Bowl, they won the ACC.
Yep.
In 06, 07. And you kind of filed Indiana away with that. Like, Indiana had a great year because the schedule worked out and they were able to get into the playoff. But as we talked about earlier when I joined you, they validated it this year. And it's proven that for all the things that we complain about, NIL, transfer portal, and now player revenue share and this, that, and the other, these are actually good things for the sport. And Tyler, you and I have mentioned this 100 billion times. The playoff in its first manifestation, the 4 teams, you usually had 7 teams, maybe 6
roughly
that would get in.
Roughly.
Maybe.
It would be in the mix legitimately to make it in.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you would have 2, maybe 3 of winning the whole thing. Possible. It was usually Alabama, Clemson. Or you get what I'm saying, or Alabama, Ohio State. It was the same characters every year. We just had a college football playoff that included Indiana. It included Texas Tech. It had Ole Miss, Tulane. I mean, what more can we ask for? And it's still an organic thing. I mean, we're still figuring it out. And I'm not going to be one of those people that sits up and complains, they should have thought of this or they should have thought of that. Man, this is like trying to figure out quantum physics in 10th grade.
Sure.
Because it's only 10 years old, 11 years old now. We're still figuring this thing out. Yeah. But we need to realize it's better.
And it's likely about to change again. We'll learn this about a week from now. Last 60 seconds, what happens in Miami on Monday night?
Indiana 35, and I hate doing predictions and scores. What the heck? I'm going to do it. Indiana 35-24.
Ooh, we're pretty close on that. I got Indiana 34-20. I think it's one of those. I think Miami's defense can keep this game tight. I think Indiana pops pops a couple scores late to kind of pull away. to where it's not, a last-second score situation like we had a couple weeks ago. I can't go against Indiana, man. It's been a phenomenal season. They look the closest to a perfect team as we've seen this year. And I just want to see the story concluded.
Well, the turnover fairy has a crush on Indiana. And
yes.
Also that being able to do those things like the back shoulder fade, that really helps extend drives and eat up clock.
It definitely does. And again, we'll see how Miami fares against their toughest opponent the entire year and how the U contingent shows up, what Michael Irvin's going to be doing on the sidelines and potentially after the game and all those kind of things. Get with somebody at the ACC Network about that UCast, by the way. I think that's something that could print money.
I'll do that. I'll send something over to Roddy Jones, see if we can make that happen.
There you go. Appreciate you hanging out with me, Scott. Again, Bill will be back in here on Tuesday. Again, no show on Monday because of the holiday, and we'll talk to you then. So for Captain Dave, Scott Hamilton, I'm Tyler Head. This has been the Halftime Show on your Friday here on The Game.